in the People Entertainment Weekly Toronto studio with the cast of The Good Nurse. Thank you guys all for joining us today. So one of the things I loved about this film is I walked out and thinking about so many different things. Obviously there was these horrible crimes this nurse was committing, but there was also a working mother involved. There was also the work that nurses and detectives and everyone does. What about this story resonated with each of you?
God, what a great question. I think that was, for me, I knew nothing of this story when I read the script. And the fullness of the script, of Christie's work, was what I found so intriguing. It's almost like you couldn't box this film into a genre. It felt like it was a profound story of a hero's journey, whilst also a story about a system that's broken. So I felt, after I'd read the script, that there was so much ruminating in my head that I thought if we could capture that and put that on screen, that maybe audiences could feel it too. Yeah.
And Amy, I called you Amy because, see, yeah, I'm good, right? Jessica, what went into preparing for the role to play Amy, you know, this nurse who went on a limb and really risked everything to tell the truth?
Well, I had the great fortune of talking to her and meeting her and learning about her story, you know, firsthand. There's a great book, The Good Nurse, that was so helpful in you know, prepping. Also, Eddie and I went to nurse school, nursing school.
She is a really good nurse. She is an actual good nurse. You were so good at that.
Well, it was really, we had laughed a lot because learning how to, you know, we didn't actually give each other IVs.
Yeah, but we did to dummies.
Yeah, to like mannequins.
And she was really good. And our Joe, our nurse in charge, kept saying, Redmayne, I don't want to be in any hospital that you're anywhere near. Whereas
because you care so much. You were so thoughtful. And then also I studied the heart condition that she had. Because that was a very, very important. I realized quite early on how that changes so much your physicality and the way you speak and how you breathe. And it was a huge part of telling the story for Amy.
And Eddie, Charlie was obviously a very complicated man. I mean, he's a serial killer, but he's also a friend, a father, and a nurse. So how did you, you know, what kind of shocked you, surprised you most when learning about him?
Well, I suppose the thing that I found most extraordinary about him was his empathy. Like, this was a man that seemed to look out for vulnerable people. He had a connection with Amy, and he seemed, talking to the real Amy, like at moments he was a very good-hearted person, but actually that empathy was then being weaponized on incredibly vulnerable people, and trying to sort of navigate that was what I found extraordinary. I mean, what he did was utterly horrendous. If you read Charlie Graeber's book, you get much more of a sense of his biography, and this was a staggeringly damaged human being.
You know, what was the biggest challenge in bringing this story to making it into a movie?
The biggest challenge and the biggest reason to make this was that it's a fascinating story about the serial killer and a system that didn't stop him. But in the core of that, there's a story about a female superhero, a naturalistic, lonely, struggling mom who went in and offered something to this world that we miss these days, which is goodness and charity and friendship. And that she went in and battled evilness with friendship and with love was for me the biggest reason to do this, and is the reason that we sit there glued to the screen still. Because what Jessica did with Amy was to make a person that we identify with right away. And we never offer any knowledge about Charlie that she doesn't have, for a long time at least. So as we sit there knowing about this story, we still feel excited about when is she going to understand, and we understand their friendship. And that's basically the core of it. For me, the structure, the whole film was about finding the reason and the way to develop the friendship.
Definitely.
Sorry, do you remember there was a moment in one of the earlier drafts of the script when it cut to Charlie in his home? Yeah. And there, while we were rehearsing, Tobias was like, this, it actually doesn't work, this scene, and it's for exactly that reason, that it's all from Amy's point of view and the audience are at the same place as Amy is.
And that is the interesting thing is it's 50% identification and 50% fascination. And if we get too fascinated, then we kind of drift away in a fascinated sphere where we don't emotionally stay connected to the story anymore. So we needed the identification. We need to stay with a human being that we could trust, lean on, and identify with. And that's basically what Jessica really offered in the opening of the film. It's just following this struggling person and getting to be her for a while until we meet Charlie again.
And Nnamdi, I think this film did a great job of really highlighting the unsung heroes, you know, like nurses, but also like the detective you play. I mean, you know, Jessica's character did an amazing job of helping, but, you know, your character really was there too. What was it like to, you know, to play that character? And what did you learn most about, you know, the line of work that they do?
You know, I had a resident detective in my partner, Noah Emmerich, because he plays a detective in every movie that he's ever in. So he knew all the nuances, and we had talked early on we were going to go to like some of the stations and do some work, but it was honestly really good to lean on him for that sort of stuff and to be able to play a real life. You know, I think Amy was a superhero, or is a superhero, but I think also Danny and Tim also were superheroes in their own respect. A lot of doors closed on them. With the help of Amy, they were able to open them. But it was, you know, it's a heroic thing that they did, and so I was honored to be able to play him.
I agree. Yeah, I walked out of there saying, I am not going to complain about my job after seeing all, you know, the work. How did, you know, Eddie and Jessica already having a friendship kind of help lead into the characters of playing friends?
My favorite scene is we got to eat pizza one day.
And it was really late at night.
It was like a night shoot, and we're like, oh, it's the pizza eating scene.
I was running out of steam,
Yeah.
and the pizza eating scene arrived. But also, there were scenes. Jess was talking about her heart condition, but the character's heart condition, and what she had to do before takes. She would run laps around the unit while the cameras were setting up in order to get her heart to a place that was sort of, and then there'd be these moments when it would be like, and roll camera, and she'd be like, okay, and they'd be like, okay, sorry, there's a problem with the camera. Which is like,
They start running again.
so the night of pizza eating, Jess had basically run a half marathon, as far as I'm aware. So I've never seen pizza more earned in my life.
Delicious.
But the truth was, it was a joy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was amazing to work together. We've talked about wanting to work together for such a long time, and I was a little nervous because there are people. Sometimes you can really like someone, and then you meet them on set, especially if they're playing a complex character. All of a sudden, their energy is different on set. And what was so lovely about working with Eddie is that, you know, he's always as lovely. He's as lovely as you see him now. He doesn't change, and that except when action happens, and then it's a completely different energy, and that's a huge gift because it doesn't torture the people around you when you're working. And so I was really very, very grateful for that.
Okay, you know, you're right. There is a weird thing when you're working with friends. Actually, that you're like, maybe you don't want to work with your friends because you can hear. I've heard stories about friends, and they're like, oh no, maybe I don't ever want to work with you because I love you, and you sound like a nightmare. But so it was thank God.
And my last question, you know, truth really is stranger than fiction when it comes to this story. What shocked you, surprised you most about, you know, Charlie and Amy and the healthcare system and everything that you learned while making the film?
I think, I was just going to say the number of people that he actually killed, I think, really shocked me.
Right.
I didn't know the story. I thought there were a handful of them that they were able to cover up and hide. But at the end of the day, when it gets into the hundreds and, I don't know, possibly thousands, we still don't know how many people, but just the number of people that he was able to do this with and get away with it, I think that blew me away when I found that out.
Yeah, unbelievable. Something like 400 or something, yeah. What about you, for all of you?
Well, I think the most shocking thing was that I realized that there was no answer to why he had done it. I would wish that the world was easier to understand, that it was more black and white, that we could actually figure out why it happened and therefore be able to stop it, and I'm not sure we could. And that was a struggle throughout the whole shoot, and in the edit, basically accepting that we couldn't explain. We just have to stay with it.
And I think I found that in the playing of him. It was when you read the script, you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, but you've got to find the answer why,
Right.
and accepting that you were never going to have that was quite a thing. And trying just to do as much of the research around who he was, and mix all that together and hope that would somehow come out was complex.
Very complex. Well, thank you guys again so much. We really enjoyed the film.
Thanks.
Everyone go see The Good Nurse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.